National Assembly agrees with President's observation on 2018 Electoral Amendment Bill, addresses all controversies raised by the executive. Federal government plans to impose stiffer restrictions on high-emitting vehicles posing health risk. In international news, International Criminal Court launches investigations into deportations of hundreds of Rohingya Muslims from Myanmar. And in sport, stranded golden eaglets to arrive in Nigeria on Thursday.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. For the past few months, there have been some sort of squabbles between the National Assembly and the executives over the Electoral Amendment Bill. The National Assembly has finally adopted the fourth Electoral Amendment Bill, which allows the strengthening of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in ensuring free, fair and credible elections. The National Assembly has also agreed with observations raised by President Muhammadu Buhari on the consolidation of the first, second and third into one document. The Joint Committee of the Senate and House of Representatives on Electoral and Political Matters met yesterday to amend and adopt the 14 clauses in the 2018 Electoral Amendment Bill. Barring any last-minute change, the All Progressives Congress will start screening aspirants on Friday and hold its presidential primary election next Wednesday. The new date was part of the revised timetable decided by the party's leadership. Screening of House of Assembly aspirants will take place at various state capitals today through Friday. The new date for aspirants for Senatorial and House of Representatives will hold early next month. The national convention of the party will take place in October in Abuja. President Buhari joins 87 other leaders at the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York on Tuesday. Buhari is expected to deliver Nigeria's national statement on the first day of the assembly. The president of Brazil will be the first world leader to present his address to the session, followed by U.S. President Donald Trump as the host country. Buhari will be the 18th speaker. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric said there are more participating heads of government this year than last year. A flood disaster has been reported from Atani campus of the Federal Polytechnic in Ogbaru local government area of Anambra State. Before this, Anambra was among 4 states the Nigerian Emergency Management Authority (NEMA) had declared as flood disaster areas. Access roads, classrooms, fields and offices, perimeter fencing, electric transformers and generating sets of the institution were all flooded. Villagers are using canoes to pass through the school compound to neighboring communities. The school has now been temporarily shut down. Organized labor unions have reiterated that the 14-day ultimatum given to the federal government will not be reversed for any reason. Minister of Labor and Employment Chris Ngige has asked the unions to adjourn the ultimatum so it could consult further with the government. The union said the new request is not acceptable to Nigerian workers who have been expecting a new minimum wage since 2016. The Trade Union Congress is also asking that the government does all its necessary documentation to enable the tripartite committee to conclude its work within 14 days. The union has threatened industrial action if its demands are not met. An Abuja court has ordered the arrest of Senator Hope Uzodinma for allegedly issuing a bad 200 million naira check. Uzodinma represents Imo West Senatorial District at the National Assembly. The senator has also failed to appear in court to answer to the allegations. Uzodinma's lawyers has been absent and the prosecuting counsel has asked the court to issue a bench warrant to compel their appearance in court. The Nigerian Ports Authority has disclosed that the review of port concession agreement has reached an advanced stage and would be signed by December. If signed, this agreement will bring an improved port efficiency to the maritime sector. NPA Managing Director Hadiza Usman said the NPA is working with the World Bank, terminal operators and other stakeholders to ensure the agreement comes out as a perfect document. The agreement signed 12 years ago authorized some terminal operators to run sections of the seaport handling cargoes and allied businesses. But operators are pointing out some lapses and asking for a review of this agreement. Usman said the agreement would attract private investors to Nigerian ports. Still in the maritime sector, the Nigerian Ports Authority is upset with some terminal operators over the newly introduced charges, which the NPA boss has warned agents and importers to ignore. Usman says a container positioning fee introduced by one of the terminal operators was rebuffed by the NPA as the charge was not tied to his service. Meanwhile, stakeholders at the Tinkan Island have raised alarm over alleged high-handedness of operators who collect storage and rent charges even when the cargoes are yet to arrive. The Central Bank of Nigeria sustained its intervention in the interbank foreign exchange market by interjecting $210 million into various segments of the market. Communications Director Isaac Okorafor said the Apex Bank offered $10 million as wholesale interventions and allocated $65 million to small and medium enterprises. Okorafor said another $55 million was allocated to customers requiring foreign exchange for business and personal travels, tuition or medical fees. Okorafor has assured the public that CBN will continue to intervene in the interbank foreign exchange market to ensure liquidity and stability. The Nigerian government aims to clean up the country's pollution problem by launching stricter inspection procedures on high-emitting cars which are deemed to pose a risk to people's health. Nigerian roads are littered with vehicles that are road unworthy and which belch smoke that pollutes the environment. ANN's Lucy Adeyemi reports.
According to a global air report by the Health Effects Institute, Nigeria has the highest burden of air pollution in Africa and the fourth in the world. Car emissions have been described as a major cause of the country's air pollution issue. The country has a serious case of importation of used cars from North America, Europe, and some parts of Asia. Most of these second-hand vehicles are suspected to have unreliable and dirty engines. In fact, some industrial vehicles, including construction and waste removal vehicles, are imported after they have been removed off the roads in Western countries. They pollute the atmosphere with carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide, which experts say can be harmful to people and the environment.
Asthma, respiratory tract infections are what it causes immediately, and on the long term it can cause cancer and affect major organs of the body. Then on the long term, for the environment, we have what we call the greenhouse effect, increase in global warming. Because of these emissions, oxides are released into the atmosphere.
The Nigerian government has now intensified efforts to ban vehicles which emit harmful greenhouse gases from the roads. Vehicle inspection officers have the authority to pull in and access suspected vehicles at the roadside.
What we are trying to achieve is to be sure that any vehicle that passes through the inspection is good enough. When I say good enough, it's considered to be roadworthy. The emission is within the limit is expected to be. Likewise, other components of the vehicle must be in good condition.
Nigeria joined other counterparts across the world to endorse the Paris Climate Change Agreement in 2017 as a commitment to the global effort to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. However, some experts believe the economic situation of the country may need to rapidly improve to enable average Nigerians the ability to afford better vehicles which adhere to the new emission standards. Lucy Adeyemi, ANN News.
Coming up, African news, Amnesty International calls Egypt an open-air poison for critics. And later, World Court launches probe into deportation of Rohingya Muslims.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you the use Palasa. Your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that balasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that balasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that balasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that balasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it known for your hand, that's balasa phone.
Welcome back. This is NN News. In African stories, a Madagascar health official said an outbreak of bubonic plague in the country has killed 2 persons on Tuesday, marking the official start of the season when the disease is considered to be at its deadliest. Health Ministry official manager Rakotoraviri said a recent count shows 8 suspected plague cases, 6 of whom recovered and 2 died in their villages. More than 200 persons died of bubonic and pneumonic plague before it was brought under control last year. The World Health Organization (WHO) has warned that this year's strain could even be more harmful. Madagascar has suffered bubonic plague outbreaks almost every year since 1980, often caused by rats fleeing forest fires during hot raining season from September to April. UN estimates an average of between 300 and 600 infections every year. Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have announced changes in the mining industry to improve conditions for the final users of the country's minerals. One of the changes is about the establishment of economic zones around the country. The announcement was made at a mining conference in the DRC's southwestern province of Lualaba, 3 months after the government introduced a new mining code that raised taxes for mining firms. The World Bank says about 2/3 of the world's cobalt is produced in the DRC. Many local residents in Kolwezi rely on mining for their livelihood, but now the pits are dangerous and frequent accidents happen because of extreme digging activities. While the government said the new regulations will remain, President Joseph Kabila has promised other improvements in the mining sector. Amnesty International says Egypt's crackdown on freedom of expression has reached alarming levels, calling for the unconditional release of Egyptians jailed for peacefully expressing their views. The rights groups launched a campaign called Egypt, an open-air prison for critics, on Tuesday. It says in a statement it wants supporters around the world to show their solidarity with Egyptians detained for expressing their views by writing to the Cairo government to put an end to the persecution. Egypt has launched the largest crackdown on critics in its modern history in 5 years, since the military ouster of a freely elected but divisive Islamic president. The government has arrested thousands of its supporters along with iconic secular activists, placed the media under tight control and suppressed freedoms. The United Nations independent experts on the enjoyment of human rights by persons with albinism recently called on Kenya to do more to protect those living with albinism in the country. In the last year, 7 cases of attacks against persons with albinism were reported in Kenya. The country has made significant progress in responding to such attacks, but still has much to do to ensure justice for the victims. Daniel Shisaya is a Nairobi resident who was born with a genetic condition which means he lacks the skin coloring pigments of melanin. Shisaya also has a 7-year-old daughter born with albinism, and every year he worries for her safety and lives in fear of attacks. In certain communities in Africa, albino body parts are a precious commodity. Some believe they have special healing properties, beliefs which puts albino people at risk.
Come to your face and tell you that, you know, your money, we can take you to Tanzania and be sold. So we feel insecure that we can't even walk at night.
Equatorial Guinea has demanded Brazil hand back more than $60 million in cash and luxury watches confiscated by border guards from a delegation accompanying the president's son, Chidori Nguema Obiang. Equatorial Guinea's foreign minister has denounced the seizure, calling it paltry and unfriendly behavior. He demanded the items be returned. Vice President of Equatorial Guinea and son of its longtime ruler arrived in Sao Paulo on Friday on a private plane as part of an 11-person delegation. Media reports say federal police found $1.5 million in cash in one bag and watches worth an estimated $15 million in another. Brazilian law prohibits people from entering the country with more than $2,500 in cash. A diplomatic source from Equatorial Guinea was quoted as saying the money was to pay for medical treatment Obiang was to undergo in Sao Paulo. The report said the watches were for his personal use and engraved with his initials. 49-year-old Obiang Jr. was sentenced in France to 3 years suspended term in October last year for money laundering. At least 2 million children went back to school on Monday in Sierra Leone in a key test of the country's landmark free education program for primary and high school students. It was a major election pledged by President Julius Maada Bio, who took office in early April. Bayer has said he will donate 3 months of his salary to the scheme, which covers school fees and supplies. Schools were packed on Monday and some pupils were unable to get in. One mother was in tears after her child was turned away for lack of space. Others had concerns about just how much of the cost the government was actually going to cover. Sierra Leone is trying to recover from social and economic fallout from a long civil war and from the recent Ebola outbreak, which has killed 4,000 people between 2014 and 2016. Its economy remains fragile and corruption is widespread. When we return, ICC launches probe into deportation of Rohingya Muslims, and later, stranded golden eaglets to arrive on Thursday.
You are watching ANN.
MTN gives 2,000% bonus for reactivating your MTN SIM. That's right. If you haven't used your MTN SIM for 45 days or more, recharge now and get 2,000% bonus. That's right, 2,000% bonus for your first recharge of every month.
While the world sleeps, ANN News stays awake. News takes no time off. We are awake so you can sleep. We report the stories that keep you up to date, events that affect your day, your week, month, and experiences. We scour the world, bringing it to your living room. Watch ANN News in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the foreign scene, the International Criminal Court's Chief Prosecutor Fatwa Bensouda has announced in a written statement and video message that the World Court has launched an investigation into the deportations of hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims from Myanmar into Bangladesh. Bensouda said the coercive acts have resulted in, quote, the forced displacement of Rohingya people, including deprivation of fundamental rights, killing, sexual violence, forced disappearance, destruction, and looting, end quote. Myanmar's military has been accused of widespread right violations, including rape, murder, torture, and burning of Rohingya villages, all leading about 700,000 Rohingya to flee to neighboring Bangladesh since last year. The trade war between the United States and China is ramping up with no end in sight. A new barrage of tariffs worth $200 billion has been foisted on China by the U.S. Of course, China is responding with a $60 billion retaliatory tariff of its own against the U.S. Joe Trachman, a professor of international law at Tufts University in Boston, says the escalating trade frictions between the two countries is a disaster for companies in both countries.
It's disastrous for both sides in economic terms. It's tough on Chinese producers that want to send goods to the United States. It's also tough on U.S. companies. President Trump doesn't want to hurt United States manufacturers or United States consumers too much. That's why it's being phased in until January 1st.
The new U.S. tariffs will take effect on Monday. The announcement came after China confirmed it had received an invitation from the U.S. for trade negotiations. China's new wave of tariffs will also go into effect on Monday, same day the U.S. tariffs becomes effective. South Korean President Kim Jong-un, during a summit with South Korean President Moon Jae-in, has vowed to permanently dismantle a missile test site and a launch pad. Both leaders signed a declaration in agreement that the Korean Peninsula should turn into a land of peace without nuclear weapons and nuclear threats. North Korea also promises to permanently dismantle its main Yongbyon nuclear complex only if the U.S. reciprocates. Kim would be the first South Korean leader to visit the North capital since the division of the peninsula after the Second World War. Both countries also announced that will seek to co-host the 2032 Summer Olympics. Europe's solution to migration has come with so much criticism. Greece's overcrowded, unsanitary Moria migrant camp has suicidal children and conditions that a psychiatrist compared to an old-fashioned mental asylum. Imprisoned men and women have been shuttled away from one gun battle only to end up incarcerated on the front line of another vulnerable to both trafficking and new abuse. The jammed Moria camp on the Greek island of Lesbos and the dangerous migrants detention centers in Libya serve as a sober reminder to European leaders that their statistical success in curbing migration is what the UN and others condemn as massive humanitarian failure. Leaders are meeting on Wednesday in a summit in Austria to discuss the issues. Up next, sport. Stranded eaglets to arrive on Thursday. Stay with us.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby. We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward. Wait, stop. You okay, Lily? You're right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes. You're almost here. Keep going. You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
There is a new all-news network on the scene in Nigeria to give news from a purely news perspective and to promote free information flow across Africa. Fresh views, unbiased, bold, with a purely African view. African News Network, ANN, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, the Golden Eaglets and officials will arrive back in the country on Thursday after a performance at the CAF Under-17 Championships in Niger. There were reports NFF abandoned the team and failed to pay the match bonuses running into millions of naira. NFF allegedly failed to provide return tickets for the team who had just won the championships. Only 4 players and 2 officials were able to leave Niger. Others were stuck at the airports. Not a good way to treat your champions. Sierra Leone is facing the possibility of a FIFA ban from international competition after the world's football body found out the country's anti-corruption commission threats to raid the offices of the Football Federation. Last week, Sierra Leone Football Association President Isha Johansson was asked to step down over allegations of match fixing involving the national team. ACC officials had barred Johansson and Secretary General Chris Kamara SLFA officers. Both have also denied any wrongdoing. That's CNN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, cnnafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CNN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a great evening.